What if everything you thought you knew about human intelligence was wrong? What if the key to unlocking superhuman cognitive abilities wasn't hidden in some futuristic laboratory, but sitting right there in your kitchen cabinet? In the next 20 minutes, we're going to explore a reality so extraordinary that it challenges the very foundations of neuroscience. A world where specific foods can instantly transform your brain, triggering cognitive abilities that seem to belong more in science fiction than in peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Sarah Chen still remembers the exact moment her worldview shattered. It was 3:47 a.m. in her Stanford neuroscience lab when she witnessed something that defied every principle she'd learned in her 15-year career. A research participant, after consuming a specific extract from Himalayan cordyceps mushrooms, had just solved a complex mathematical equation that should have taken a trained mathematician hours to complete, and he did it in under 3 minutes. But this wasn't just any participant. This was David Martinez, a construction worker with no formal mathematical training beyond high school algebra. The brain scans told an even more incredible story. Martinez's neural activity had exploded into patterns that resembled the brain waves of mathematical savants, with synaptic firing rates that exceeded normal human parameters by over 300%. Most shocking of all, these changes had occurred within 30 minutes of consuming the extract. Dr. Chen found herself face-to-face with a phenomenon that mainstream science claimed was impossible: food that could instantly unlock superhuman cognitive abilities. This wasn't an isolated incident. Across research institutions worldwide, scientists were documenting similar cases that challenged everything we thought we knew about human potential. In Tibet, monks had been consuming specific high-altitude berries for centuries, achieving states of mental clarity that allowed them to memorize entire texts after a single reading. Western researchers who initially dismissed these claims as folklore found themselves confronted with documented cases of individuals displaying photographic memory capabilities that appeared and disappeared in direct correlation with their consumption of these mysterious fruits. The breakthrough that changed everything came from an unlikely source: a small research team in Norway studying the cognitive effects of traditional Sami foods. Dr. Erik Lindqvist and his colleagues were investigating why reindeer herders in the Arctic Circle displayed exceptional spatial memory and navigation abilities. What they discovered would revolutionize our understanding of the human brain. The Sami people had been consuming a specific lichen, rich in unique psychoactive compounds, that seemed to enhance their ability to navigate vast, featureless landscapes with supernatural precision. When Lindqvist's team conducted controlled studies, the results were staggering. Participants who consumed extracts of this Arctic lichen showed immediate improvements in spatial reasoning that exceeded the capabilities of trained navigators. Brain imaging revealed that the compound was activating dormant neural pathways in regions associated with three-dimensional processing, essentially rewiring the brain in real time to enhance specific cognitive functions. These discoveries opened the floodgates to a new field of research that scientists are calling nutritional neuroplasticity, the study of how specific foods can trigger immediate and dramatic changes in brain structure and function. What makes these findings so extraordinary is the speed at which these changes occur. Traditional neuroscience taught us that significant brain changes took weeks or months to manifest. These foods were triggering measurable cognitive enhancement in minutes. Dr. Rachel Thompson at MIT's Brain and Cognitive Sciences Department made the next major breakthrough while studying the effects of ancient grains on cognitive function. Her research team discovered that certain varieties of amaranth, particularly those grown at high altitudes in Peru, contained compounds that could dramatically enhance pattern recognition abilities. Participants in her studies began displaying an almost supernatural ability to identify complex patterns in data sets, solving puzzles that typically required advanced computational analysis. The most remarkable case in Thompson's research involved Maria Santos, a graduate student in literature who volunteered for the study. After consuming a specific preparation of Peruvian amaranth, Santos demonstrated the ability to identify literary patterns and connections across vast bodies of text that had eluded scholars for decades. She began making connections between works separated by centuries and continents, as if her brain had suddenly gained access to a vast network of previously invisible relationships. Brain scans revealed that the amaranth compounds were enhancing connectivity between different regions of Santos's brain, creating new neural highways that allowed for unprecedented information processing. The enhancement was so pronounced that Santos temporarily displayed capabilities reminiscent of individuals with acquired savant syndrome, a rare condition where people suddenly develop extraordinary abilities after brain trauma. But perhaps the most mind-bending discoveries were coming from research into mycological cognitive enhancement, the study of how specific mushrooms can unlock human mental potential. Dr. James Wright at the University of California, Berkeley, had been investigating the cognitive effects of various fungal species when he stumbled upon something that would challenge everything science understood about consciousness itself. Wright's research focused on a rare species of mushroom found only in the cloud forests of Ecuador, known locally as cerebro de Dios, the brain of God. Indigenous shamans had used this mushroom for centuries, claiming it could allow individuals to see with the mind of the forest. Western science had dismissed these claims until Wright's controlled studies revealed something extraordinary. Participants who consumed carefully measured doses of the mushroom extract began displaying enhanced pattern recognition that bordered on precognitive abilities. They could predict the outcome of complex scenarios with accuracy rates that exceeded statistical probability. Even more remarkable, they demonstrated the ability to process multiple streams of information simultaneously, a cognitive feat that typically requires years of specialized training. The neurological basis for these abilities remained largely mysterious. Brain imaging showed increased activity in regions associated with intuitive processing and pattern recognition, but the mechanisms behind the enhancement defied conventional neuroscientific understanding. Participants described their experience as having access to an expanded awareness that allowed them to perceive patterns and connections that were normally invisible to human consciousness. These findings forced researchers to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of human intelligence itself. Were these foods simply enhancing existing capabilities, or were they unlocking entirely new forms of cognition that lay dormant within the human brain? The implications were staggering. If specific foods could instantly trigger superhuman cognitive abilities, what did this mean for our understanding of human potential? The breakthrough that brought these questions into sharp focus came from Dr. Lisa Park's research at Johns Hopkins University. Park had been studying the effects of specific algae species on memory formation when she discovered something that would reshape neuroscience forever. Blue-green algae harvested from certain high-altitude lakes contained compounds that could trigger the formation of what she termed crystalline memories, recollections so vivid and detailed that they seemed to transcend normal human experience. Participants in Park's studies reported being able to recall events with photographic precision after consuming the algae extracts. But these weren't just enhanced memories. They were memories that seemed to contain information that the participants shouldn't have had access to. Individuals began recalling details about their environment that they hadn't consciously observed, as if the enhanced memory formation was somehow expanding their perceptual awareness beyond normal human limitations. The most extraordinary case involved Thomas Chun, a software engineer who participated in Park's study. After consuming the algae extract, Chun began recalling childhood memories with such incredible detail that researchers were initially skeptical. But when they verified his recollections with family members and photographic evidence, they discovered that Chun was accurately remembering conversations, events, and even weather patterns from when he was 3 years old, memories that should have been neurologically impossible to retain with such clarity. Brain scans revealed that the algae compounds were triggering unprecedented activity in the hippocampus and associated memory centers, creating new neural pathways that seemed to enhance both memory storage and retrieval. But more mysteriously, the enhanced memory formation appeared to be accessing information through sensory channels that participants weren't consciously aware of using. As word of these discoveries spread through the scientific community, researchers began reporting similar findings from around the globe. In Japan, scientists discovered that certain varieties of seaweed contained compounds that could enhance mathematical processing speed by up to 400%. In Australia, indigenous foods were found to trigger enhanced visual processing that allowed individuals to perceive subtle environmental changes that normally required specialized training to detect. The pattern that emerged was both fascinating and disturbing. Throughout human history, various cultures had developed foods and preparations that could unlock specific cognitive abilities. From the ayahuasca ceremonies of the Amazon to the soma rituals of ancient India, humanity had been experimenting with consciousness-enhancing substances for millennia. What modern science was discovering was that many of these traditional practices had a solid neurochemical foundation, but the implications extended far beyond historical curiosity. If these foods could trigger such dramatic cognitive enhancement, what did this mean for the future of human development? Were we standing on the threshold of a new evolutionary leap, one that could be triggered not by millions of years of natural selection, but by the foods we chose to consume? Dr. Michael Harrison at Harvard Medical School found himself grappling with these questions when his research into nootropic foods took an unexpected turn. Harrison had been studying the cognitive effects of various nuts and seeds when he discovered that certain varieties of pine nuts from Siberian forests contained compounds that could trigger what he termed synthetic synesthesia, the temporary ability to perceive connections between different sensory modalities. Participants in Harrison's studies began reporting that they could see mathematical concepts as visual patterns, hear the emotional content of written text, and taste the logical structure of arguments. These weren't just metaphorical descriptions. Brain imaging confirmed that the pine nut compounds were creating temporary cross-connections between different sensory processing regions, essentially rewiring the brain to process information in entirely new ways. The most remarkable case involved Dr. Angela Rodriguez, a philosophy professor who volunteered for the study. After consuming the Siberian pine nut extract, Rodriguez began demonstrating an unprecedented ability to solve complex philosophical problems by visualizing abstract concepts as geometric patterns. She described being able to see the logical structure of arguments as three-dimensional shapes, allowing her to identify flaws and connections that had previously eluded philosophical analysis. The enhancement lasted for approximately 6 hours, during which Rodriguez produced insights into consciousness and free will that her colleagues described as revolutionary. But when the effects wore off, she found herself unable to access the same level of understanding, as if a door in her mind had temporarily opened and then closed again. These discoveries raised profound ethical questions that the scientific community was only beginning to grapple with. If foods could instantly unlock superhuman cognitive abilities, who would have access to these enhancements? Would society divide into cognitive classes based on access to brain-boosting foods? And perhaps most importantly, were humans psychologically prepared to handle such dramatic enhancements to their mental capabilities? The case of Dr. Stephen Walsh provided a sobering example of the potential dangers. Walsh, a researcher at Columbia University, had been experimenting with various cognitive enhancers when he consumed an experimental extract derived from certain varieties of cacao that had been exposed to specific electromagnetic frequencies during growth. The enhancement that followed was unprecedented. Walsh began displaying mathematical and pattern recognition abilities that exceeded those of trained savants. But the cognitive enhancement came with an unexpected psychological cost. Walsh found himself overwhelmed by the constant stream of patterns and connections that his enhanced brain was perceiving. He described the experience as seeing the matrix underlying reality, a perception so intense that it began to interfere with his ability to function in everyday situations. The enhancement had triggered a form of cognitive hypersensitivity that made normal human interaction almost unbearable. Walsh's experience highlighted a crucial question that researchers were only beginning to explore. Were human brains psychologically equipped to handle such dramatic cognitive enhancements? Evolution had shaped our minds to process information at specific rates and in particular ways. What happened when foods could instantly override millions of years of neural evolution? The answer was beginning to emerge from longitudinal studies of individuals who had experienced food-based cognitive enhancement. Dr. Sarah Kim at Stanford found that participants who underwent repeated enhancement sessions began displaying permanent changes in their cognitive processing. Their brains seemed to be learning from the enhanced states, gradually incorporating some of the improved capabilities into their baseline functioning. This finding suggested something extraordinary, that temporary cognitive enhancement through foods might be triggering permanent evolutionary changes in human brain function. Participants were essentially using these foods to train their brains to access higher levels of cognitive performance, creating a form of directed mental evolution that could be achieved within a single lifetime. The implications were staggering. If foods could not only temporarily unlock superhuman cognitive abilities, but also trigger permanent improvements in brain function, humanity might be standing at the threshold of a cognitive revolution that could reshape our entire species. The line between nutrition and evolution was blurring in ways that challenged our most fundamental assumptions about human development. As researchers continue to map the relationship between specific foods and cognitive enhancement, they're discovering that the mechanisms involved are far more complex than initially believed. It's not simply a matter of consuming certain compounds and experiencing immediate enhancement. The foods seem to be interacting with existing neural pathways in ways that suggest a deep evolutionary relationship between human consciousness and the natural compounds found in specific plants and fungi. Dr. Chen's latest research has revealed that many of the most powerful cognitive enhancers are found in species that have co-evolved with human populations over thousands of years. This suggests that the relationship between certain foods and human brain function isn't accidental. It's the result of a long evolutionary dance between human consciousness and the natural world. The foods that unlock superhuman cognitive abilities aren't just random chemical compounds. They're keys that fit locks that evolution has been crafting in the human brain for millennia. We're only now discovering that these locks exist, and that the keys to unlocking humanity's cognitive potential have been hiding in plain sight all along. As we stand on the brink of this cognitive revolution, we're forced to confront questions that extend far beyond neuroscience. What does it mean to be human when our mental capabilities can be instantly transformed by the foods we consume? How do we navigate the ethical implications of cognitive enhancement that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of human civilization? The answers to these questions will shape not just the future of neuroscience, but the future of humanity itself. We're discovering that the line between food and consciousness, between nutrition and evolution, is far thinner than we ever imagined. And in crossing that line, we may be taking the first steps toward unlocking the true potential of the human mind, a potential that has been waiting within us all along, hidden behind doors that can be opened by the mysterious foods that instantly boost our brains. The journey into humanity's cognitive future has only just begun, and the path forward leads through territories that are as exciting as they are unknown. What we eat may literally determine not just who we are, but who we have the potential to become.